If you have been following the Speed Puzzle cinematic universe of Europe on YouTube, then you have seen that the Belgian Jigsaw Puzzle Nationals has been on multiple videos. So we're going to go a little bit differently today, because if you want to see a recap, there's already two very good recaps out there. One of them is Stein's video, where you can see a lot of details about how the competition went, and you can also see Jeanette's video, which is also a recap of her experience of the competition. Because I don't want to do a third recap, because it's pretty much the same, we're going to do something different today, and that's going to be revisiting some of the puzzles that were used in the competition. I did a time lapse of all competition puzzles. Obviously, one was lost, but other than that, I have kept all of them. So we're going to take a look at how we solved the competition puzzles. And in addition to that, I have redone two of the competition puzzles that I did in the solo competition, so the preliminary and the final puzzle, and I have also done the other preliminary round just to see how I would have placed if it was my first try at the competition. Obviously, you can't really compare your ideal circumstances, which is at home, not at a competition, on your usual table, with your usual stuff, with a competition where you are under pressure. But it's still always interesting to see what strategies I use or how I have changed compared to a first try. So we're going to see whether I manage to actually improve on my times of the puzzles that I have done, and if I do anything differently compared to the first round. Important to note, I didn't rewatch any of the time lapses from the competition, so I have actually very little idea of how I did those puzzles, but it's going to be interesting to see the difference between the two competitions. And just to give you an idea of what my experience was at the Belgian Jigsaw Puzzle Nationals, I did put together a little bit of a montage to give you an impression of my competition experience.
Now enter the puzzling zone.
You might be wondering what the piece of trash on the side of the table is, and those are my improvised puzzle boards because I left my normal ones at home. The puzzle itself didn't start that easily because the tape on my puzzle box was not cut, so I needed the help of a judge. But once that was done, I could move on to the full flip, and I actually decided to start with the edge this time. However, I didn't find a lot of the edge pieces, so I moved on to the sky, interestingly, which I normally don't do, but it seemed pretty easy in this puzzle. I then moved on to some elements in the middle of the picture, like that lake and the deer, because those stood out quite well. And from there, it kind of turned into a pick and place exercise in the middle and bottom of the puzzle, because there's just a lot of pieces that I kind of recognized where they went, but didn't exactly manage to connect them to anything yet. So I started filling in the bottom and middle of the puzzle, just filling in more and more of the busy sections of the image itself. Obviously, this is more my style. Then I started moving on to the mountains once I had the middle filled in, and you have to watch out for that part because something's wrong with it. And that's where I found it. So it was upside down for a very long time, and that's basically what messed up my solve in that area. For the last few pieces, I was actually head-to-head with my friend and prayers partner Steffi, which is kind of a fun neck-to-neck addition to the competition itself. I completed my puzzle with a final time of 49:29, and that is something that I was super happy about, that I made it under 50 minutes. That is always a real victory for me. This was my first attempt of this puzzle, and my time got me to 6th place in the competition. I obviously had to try again at home. It is important to point out that there are a lot of things that are very, very different if you're puzzling at home and on an image that you know already. But still, it is very good to test your skills. And you can already very clearly see the difference of how it went with the puzzle. I found way more of the edge pieces. I obviously didn't have the hiccup with the non-cut tape. And I progressed in a much more structured way than before, probably because I know the picture. Here, you can already see my progress is very different compared to the previous one. I started working way more systematically with points of the puzzle that I could sort out much better. I had way more overview of the texture, and I just already knew the picture. I knew where to place specific pieces, and that speeds up the entire process very much. I could go way more systematically, filling in specific trees and specific patterns, but what didn't change is that I did the mountain at the very end. My time was 41:40, which is an 8-minute improvement compared to my first attempt. So, had I completed this puzzle before, I would have probably finished way higher in the list. But again, we're not considering this as a competition attempt, so it doesn't really count.
Five, four, three, two, one. Good luck!
For round B of the solo competition, I was in the commentating booth with Cameron from Canada, so we could enjoy a first row seat of the competition itself, taking a look at the puzzle, which was from the same national park series, but this time it was Yellowstone. I have already known this puzzle and had it at home, so I had the chance to actually try it out for myself. This was actually also a first attempt, but in a way it's slightly different because this is the last of the national park series for me in the lineup. I have done all the other images from this series, so at this point I think I also kind of realized how you can crack this kind of image. Basically, again, I started with the edge and decided to go with the text because it's pretty easy to pick it out again. And at this point, I think I kind of learned the artist's art style as well. So there's a lot of elements that I kind of recognize because they, even though they're not the same as all the other images, but the elements are very, very similar. So there's something in the background, for example, which I noticed very early on. There are animals that I have spotted very early. These are these brown areas. And also, I just kind of found this puzzle way easier than all the others, but I still keep wondering if it's because I already know all the other pictures or because this image is actually easier than all the others. That is going to have to stay a question, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but I for sure enjoyed this picture the most of all of them. It does have some tricky elements once you get deep into the picture, but I think it is still the most doable. I also ended up finishing on the Steam, like pretty much everyone in the competition, because that is actually kind of tricky. My time was 47:15 on the first attempt, so I would like to think that this would also have put me in a pretty good placement at the competition as well. My results in the qualification round have landed me in the final of the Belgian Jigsaw Puzzle Championship. It is so super special to be able to make the finals in any competition, so I was really overjoyed to be there. Up until I actually saw the puzzle that we received, which was the flower market in France. And this is definitely not my style of puzzle. And I think also the puzzling in this time lapse is going to show what it's like when you get a puzzle that is not your strength. I really, really struggle with anything that involves colors and textures and where I can't really use the reference image that much. And this is one of those prime examples. Even though I could sort out pretty well the specific colors, I had real trouble trying to place them in the correct direction that they are facing. And so that really made the solve difficult. I was struggling on this puzzle because it's just so hard for me to see where anything goes. So it was taking a lot of time, and I could feel that very early on. You can also see here that I'm just not even close to the space that I usually have in any speed puzzle competition. I'm also sitting down and I'm kind of taking my time to find pieces and just place things and try and orientate myself. So this is definitely not my strongest puzzling that I have shown over the weekend. This was probably the hardest puzzle for me throughout the entire day as well. At this point, it was also pretty late during the competition. We have been through a couple of rounds and I was also getting slightly tired, but that's not really an excuse. It's just, it's not my puzzle and I didn't enjoy it that very much. However, I did want to do my best since going to competitions is really taking the risk that you're going to sometimes get puzzles that are not really your style, and it's a way to grow. So I was trying so many techniques and trying to just do my best, but somehow it was not coming together, including that edge over there, because I never noticed what was wrong with it, but it was messing me up very much up until I realized that the entire edge was the wrong way around. That's when all of a sudden also the picture started taking a bit more shape and I could orientate myself at least a little bit more. But to be exactly honest, I never had a strategy on this picture. I just went piece by piece and hoping for the best. I would even go so far to say that I kind of went shape sorting as well, even though I didn't exactly sort the pieces, but I did look for the piece shape at one point instead of the picture because it was just not helping me. I'm not strong in these puzzles, and that is how I also ended up taking longer than what I usually do now at competitions and longer than what my times were in any of the other rounds during this competition. My time was 1 hour and 4 minutes and 39 seconds, which is, yeah, at least done in the given time of the competition. The time actually landed me on 19th place, which is a big drop compared to the previous rounds. But considering that I struggle with this puzzle very much, I was still really happy that I managed to do it, at least in the given time. Getting a puzzle like this also gives a perfect opportunity for it to be redone multiple times to kind of work on the strategy and see how you can improve. So that's exactly what I did. On the second approach, I really don't think I had much more of a strategy than for the first attempt, but I did know what to sort out ahead. So I again started with the edge and I was way more successful with it this time. And I worked on the white flowers a lot, but also basically just collecting everything that is red or purple. And all in all, I think the only real difference between my first attempt and this one was that I had way more structure in how I was working. It was not as chaotic. I kind of tried to go color by color, which is kind of difficult because there's a lot of these colors just popping out in random spots of the image. Around midway through the puzzle, I did start falling back onto pick and placing, just randomly recognizing pieces and placing them in the image, including finally working on the pots, which is kind of the highlight of the puzzle for me. Those are the most distinct and recognizable parts, and I'm not really sure why I held off on doing them for so long. The middle section of the puzzle, where those dark shelves are, is somehow the one that is tripping me up the most every time. I can never tell the orientation of things on the pieces, and that's why I can't really place anything for a very long time. And then this basically last third of the puzzle is just a struggle. I call these a salad, to be honest, because it's a lot of green pieces that I just have to like figure out, mostly doing shape work at this point, and it's just not changing. My time on the second attempt was 55 minutes and 30 seconds, which is a little over 9 minutes of improvement compared to the first attempt, which I'm very happy with, to be honest. Had I practiced this puzzle before, I might have finished on the podium. Again, you can't compare at-home results with any competition, but still, I think it really shows how much it can influence if someone has already completed an image compared to someone who hasn't. The puzzle choice for the first pair round was an exciting one, primarily for me because I have chosen this puzzle for my own competition a little earlier in the year, so it was exciting to see it being used somewhere else as well. But on the other hand, this puzzle is part of a series, The Colorful Markets, and we have seen in the solo rounds already that there were puzzles used from one series, so we were speculating for the next round that it might be another puzzle from the same series. And we were so right. The puzzle that we received was the Spice Market from the Colorful Market series. And I was actually very happy to get this puzzle because I think it's a very sortable puzzle that you can kind of divide into two people. So it was a nice challenge for the pair competition. Once Steffi did the edge and I kind of sorted out a bit of the puzzle, we started working a little bit top and bottom, as in me doing the bottom busy section and Steffi working on those hanging plants at the top of the image, but that was a really challenging part, so we kind of worked all over the place. Basically, whichever part we could really recognize, and we just kind of worked with the flow. The funny thing about this puzzle is that as we were speculating of what the puzzle is going to be, we obviously discussed this one as well, and we really thought that we could go section by section on it, but it turned out that it doesn't really work that way. The spices are kind of all over the place, so whenever you pick up a specific color, it can be in multiple spots of the image, and that makes it kind of challenging. So it turned into a kind of working from outside in, because there's this dimension that is going into the puzzle. And obviously the colorful sections were the first areas that we could complete, and we just closed in onto the dark middle area. During the last maybe 20 pieces and the last stretch of the puzzle, we kind of knew that we were doing really well because we didn't hear any applause from the first place. And as it turns out, we were neck to neck with our neighboring table, so much so that we were piece by piece almost at the same spot in the puzzle and even working on the same area. This came down to a really exciting competition between our two pairs, so much so that we placed our last piece in the very same second, ending up in a tie with the other table that was right next to us. And we ended up in a tie on second place with 27.59. We were obviously overjoyed with this result, and it moved us on to the final. Following the pattern of the whole competition so far, the final puzzle of the pairs rounds was the Zion National Park puzzle. And I'm pretty confident to say that this is the hardest one of the whole series. It is somehow super confusing, and you're going to see that we also struggled a bit with it. So we again started with the edge as per usual and basically tried doing as many of the bigger chunks of the image as possible, such as the pink sky on the top and that rock on the bottom right side. What makes this puzzle very tricky is that there's a lot of places where it's a lot of pick and placing, and I somehow found that in pairs it can be just more difficult to do. Still, our pair dynamic could work out really well here because I would place some islands or some elements that I could do with some dead reckoning and placing, and Steffi could connect them to a bigger section of the puzzle or just connect them to anywhere in the image where it was necessary. What I think makes this puzzle the hardest of the entire series is that, as opposed to the others, the very busy areas in the middle are not just busy, but they are also kind of repetitive, but in a weird backwards way. So you are really trying to navigate really small areas that are kind of hard to place compared to all the others. And an added bonus difficulty for me is that there's again a mountain that I just can't get right. And here as well, I needed Steffi's help to actually place it for me, and we can build around it later on. Even when we had about like 50 or 60 pieces left, it was still not like self-evident of where the pieces go. So we were kind of struggling with placing everything, which is a challenge in a puzzle for sure. Our final time on this puzzle was 33 minutes and 2 seconds, which landed us on 4th place in the overall ranking and 3rd place among the international pairs, which was obviously a big reason to celebrate, and we were very, very happy with this result. All that is left is the team competition. Our team qualification round is unfortunately the one where my camera just decided to give up on me, so I don't have footage of our actual puzzle solve. I do have some snippets from the live stream though, which also shows our magnificent team name, which was Placeholder this time. And the story behind that is that I basically signed up our team without really ever talking about what name we're going to be picking. And then we just never did, and the placeholder name stayed. Since we were placed at table 1, we were joking that we would like to be the placeholders in the sense that we hold that place 1, which actually did happen in this round, which is making me a little bit sad about not having a footage of the whole solve, but the time result and the first place for the qualification round is enough this time. In the team final, we received 2 paper bags this time, one concealing 500, the other a 1,000-piece puzzle, and they were clearly labeled which one we had to start with and which one we had to solve a second. 500 pieces for a team round can actually be very tricky, mostly because it's a lot of hands for not that very many pieces, so we have to be very conscious about our space management and who does what and how we coordinate between each other, just so that we don't get into each other's way. In the beginning, you can see that we were working on very clearly defined sections of the puzzle and avoiding having to put everything together until the very last, just so that we have enough room and enough space to navigate and just to not bump into each other the whole time. Once the top of the puzzle was done, though, that bottom section was really tricky for our team. The lake section of the image is also just very murky and there's a lot of things going on, which is a little harder to navigate, especially if there's this many hands involved. Our team was also puzzling together for the first time during this day, so the switch between the puzzles was an extra little challenge, and I'm really glad that the live stream actually caught it on camera, because here we were basically just trying to figure out who does what, and it felt extremely chaotic, but it actually looks way more coordinated than what it felt like. The 1,000-piece puzzle was definitely the more challenging one of the lineup. I think that the thought behind the whole concept of having the 500 and 1,000-piece puzzle was to have one that is definitely doable, both in piece count and difficulty for all the teams that are competing in the competition, since there were also a lot of beginner puzzling teams, so most likely the organizers wanted to provide something that is doable for everyone. To make up for the easy puzzle in the beginning, this one was not easy. The one thing that is very good about it is that it was very easy to divide into separate sections so that each person was working on something different. But even with that, it's a lot of the same color and a lot of big sections, and it's just a lot of pieces for the 4 people. We really struggled on this one, especially once the bridge was done and a little bit of the water on the one side and those mountains in the middle. It was pretty much just having to fill in all the gaps between them, and it was just a lot of pieces of the same color. So it's definitely a big challenge for everyone. That gradient sky is actually also much more tricky than what it looks like. And that arch on the top is just a lot of texture and a lot of the same color, but scattered all over the place. So it really makes it difficult, and it involves a lot of shape sorting around the end because you can't really solve it any other way. However, we did manage to tackle it in the end, and it was definitely a big feeling of success for everyone involved. It was also just incredible to puzzle together with Inge and Jim, because they have a really good energy at the puzzle table, and I'm just really thankful for the experience that they randomly agreed to puzzle with us. Our time for the 2 puzzles was 1 hour, 3 minutes and 49 seconds, which placed us 3rd in the overall ranking, but also 3rd among the international teams. Since this was the Belgian Championships, the international teams did not get a separate prize or anything like that, but we were just happy about each other's results, so we did end up making an entire group picture just for the international team ranking. These were the puzzles used for the 2026 Jigsaw Puzzle Championship in Belgium. I think that it was a very good lineup, and it really felt like there was a lot of thought put into what puzzles they are going to be using. I think it's a very nice idea to have different series being used at a competition with a little bit of a variation in that you have a line of puzzles coming out in a year, and then those are going to be varied between the different rounds. I hope that you enjoyed this video and that maybe you're also going to try one of these puzzles or any competition puzzles a second time once you're back from the competition, just to see what you would do differently and how your time improves. If you have done this before, then let me know in the comments what experience you have gained from it, or maybe what strategies you have figured out that are really good for you now. Because when you're redoing puzzles and you no longer have to really think about what the picture is and you can focus on everything else, I think it can really improve your technique. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the upcoming videos, because Belgium was only the 2nd stop of my European tour of national championships, because I have started in Sweden in the beginning of March, only to move on to Belgium a week later. But after that, I was actually at the German Jigsaw Puzzle Championships, and that was also a very, very nice experience, and I can't wait to tell you about it. So if you don't want to miss out on that video, then definitely subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and leave a like on this video if you have found a new speed puzzling strategy that you want to try out in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.